German planners believed the Ruhr dams were unbreakable. They based this on reinforced concrete up to 85 meters thick and massive anti-aircraft batteries covering the structures. Yet on the night of May 16 to 17, 1943, these assumptions collapsed. In 6 hours, two of the most critical dams in Germany's industrial heartland had been breached. More than 330 million tons of water blasted downstream, overwhelming bridges, power stations, and factories across 60 kilometers. The attacks left the Nazi high command stunned. Their faith in static defenses proved disastrously misplaced. 77 Royal Air Force aircrew and 19 specially modified Avro Lancaster WWII bombers undertook the assault. The operation relied on a new invention, Barnes Wallis's upkeep rotating mine, later called the bouncing bomb. The Lancasters, stripped of mid-upper turrets to save weight, approached as low as 18 meters above the water at 370 km/h. Each aircraft carried a single 4,200 kg upkeep device. In total, 8 bombers were lost and 53 aircrew killed or captured. Yet the breaches at Mürren and Eder left over 125 factories flooded, causing major disruption to the Ruhr's war production. No one in Berlin had anticipated the attacking forces' combination of technical innovation, precise flying, and willingness to accept high losses. Allied engineers and airmen accomplished what German intelligence had considered impossible. The story that follows reveals the planning, invention, and sacrifice behind one of the most technically daring raids of the Second World War. May 16, 1943, 21:30 hours. Wing Commander Guy Gibson led No. 617 Squadron Royal Air Force from RAF Scampton, Lincolnshire, for Operation Chastise. Gibson's orders from Air Chief Marshal Sir Arthur Harris were precise. Breach the Mürren, Eder, and Sorp dams in Germany's Ruhr Valley using Barnes Wallis's upkeep mines. His force comprised 19 Avro Lancaster WWII bombers, each with a crew of 7, and equipped with twin Merlin engines, modified bomb bays, and oboe navigation systems for low-level night missions. Opposing them, Major Karl Fischer, Luftwaffe Flak Commander, controlled 14 20 Fla K-38 anti-aircraft guns and 2 37 Fla K-43 batteries, arrayed around the Mürren and Eder dams. Additional searchlights and barrage balloons protected critical approach routes. The dam complexes, nearly 40 meters high and over 600 meters long, were considered invulnerable to conventional bombing. German engineers believed the dams could absorb hits from 10,000 kg of high explosive without catastrophic failure. The Royal Air Force anticipated heavy losses, but believed precise, low-level delivery of the upkeep mine spun backward at 500 RPM for surface skipping could breach the dams. Successful trials at Reculver and Chesil Beach showed that the bomb could bypass torpedo nets and strike the wall's base. This new weapon's effectiveness, however, had never been tested against a full-scale target under combat conditions. Recent aerial reconnaissance dated May 11, 1943, provided detailed photographs of the dam's defenses, including flak positions and troop concentrations. It missed increased Luftwaffe patrols and radar coverage within the previous 48 hours. The geography featured steep wooded valleys, with the Mürren Dam rising 43 meters above the river, leaving pilots just seconds to line up and release their bombs. What happened in the next 6 hours would determine whether Germany's vital Ruhr industries could recover from a surgical airborne strike. At 21:39 hours, the first wave of Avro Lancaster WWII bombers, led by Wing Commander Guy Gibson, left RAF Scampton. Each aircraft carried a 4,200 kg upkeep mine spinning at precisely 500 RPM. Following strict radio silence, 133 aircrew maintained altitude at 60 feet using manually calibrated spotlights as altimeters. Navigational crews monitored oboe radar fixes while approaching the coastline at 370 km/h. The flight path took them over the North Sea, across the Netherlands, and into heavily defended German airspace. By 23:57 hours, Gibson and 617 Squadron reached the Mürren Dam. Flak Lieutenant Heinrich Assmann commanded a battery of 20 Fla K-38 cannons, capable of firing 450 rounds per minute at the northwest approach. The initial attack saw Gibson's Lancaster draw fire as pilot officer John Hopgood's crew released their upkeep mine at 425 meters range. His aircraft was hit, resulting in a starboard engine fire. On the ground, air raid sirens blared across the valley, but German defenses failed to stop the bomb's trajectory. Within minutes, 2 aircraft were hit, and 1 crashed short of the target. At 23 hours, British intelligence officer squadron leader Henry Melville at Saint-Eval intercepted a Luftwaffe transmission, indicating confusion about the attacker's intentions. Meanwhile, German radio operator Oberfeldwebel Hans Bohm at Eder Dam reported low-flying aircraft, but received no additional guidance. Wind speeds of 14 knots and a low overcast ceiling reduced visibility to 900 meters, complicating both attack runs and defensive gunnery. At 28 hours, Gibson's order to mark the breach at Mürren signaled operational success. By 100 hours, 2 dams had been struck, with catastrophic flooding just beginning downstream. But at 1:12 hours, a new technical challenge at the Sorp Dam emerged that would prove decisive. At 1:15 hours, Flight Lieutenant Les Knight of 617 Squadron reached the Sorp Dam flying Lancaster ED-912AJN. Unlike previous targets, the Sorp was an earthen dam, 700 meters long and reinforced with a central concrete core 1 meters thick. Knight's bomb aimer, squadron leader David Shannon, noted that the upkeep mine's trajectory set by the spinning mechanism at 500 RPM and a drop altitude of precisely 18 meters would require a straight run parallel to the embankment, rather than the head-on attacks used at Mürren or Eder. Following 2 practice runs, the crew observed fog drifting across the crest and recorded wind gusts up to 15 knots, making stabilization at low altitude extremely difficult. On the third approach, at 1:26 hours, ED-912 released its upkeep mine just 120 meters from the dam wall. Visual confirmation through handheld Aldi's lamps showed the device skipped once and struck the concrete core near midpoint, impacting at an estimated 380 km/h. The brief shockwave registered as 0.8 rise on the onboard accelerometer. The upkeep mine, designed by Barnes Wallis, operated optimally against vertical concrete surfaces submerged in water, as at Mürren and Eder. Its backward spin delivered by an external hydraulic motor was engineered for surface skipping over distances up to 450 meters. The mine's casing, 137 cm in diameter and 152 cm in length, contained 2990 kg of Torpex explosive. However, the Sorp's earthen construction, with a crest width of 36 meters and a sloped upstream face of 35 degrees, presented a fundamentally different target profile. Unlike the Mürren, Sorp's thick soil embankment acted as a dampening buffer. British trials at Reculver in early 1943 did not include full-scale earth embankment simulations, meaning the upkeep's destructive effect remained untested under these conditions. Additional technical factors involved were the bomb's limited delayed fuse penetration in soil, recorded to average 21 meters, the erratic bounce trajectory caused by uneven terrain, and insufficient water coverage hydrodynamics at the crest. The decision to attack Sorp last had been made by Air Vice Marshal Ralph Cochrane at 1500 hours on May 16, based on interim air reconnaissance, indicating reduced anti-aircraft defenses compared to Mürren. British G2 report E-458-8, dated May 15, assumed a vertical wall configuration, failing to account for soil characteristics. In contrast to the well-studied concrete defenses at Eder and Mürren, analysis of the 1916 Battle of the Somme showed German earthworks absorbed 85% more explosive energy than concrete bunkers, suggesting a much lower breaching probability. The Air Ministry's night bombing manual instructed attacks against vertical targets with at least 5 meters of water depth at the base. At Sorp, the measured depth was only 2-3 meters, creating variance from doctrine. Captured German engineering reports from Bauleitung Edertel revealed that Major Ing. Hans von Halbeck concluded on May 18, the embankment absorbed most of the detonation energy. Seismic failure is unlikely under present conditions. Interrogation of Hauptmann Dieter Vogel, Luftwaffe Flak Command, confirmed the dam showed only surface cracking. The UK National Archives Air 14523 cite flood discharge volume at Mürren post-breach as 330 million tons, while Sorp's measured rise was less than 1.2 meters, a 99.5% difference in immediate hydraulic impact. Documentary evidence from Barnes Wallis's May 19 memorandum notes. Earth structures demand fundamentally different bomb design. 617 Squadron's second wave, under Squadron leader Henry Maudslay, initiated a follow-up sortie at 1:38 hours, targeting Sorp's midsection. Within 24 minutes, 3 additional upkeep mines were delivered along the crest, but successive blast meter recordings showed only minor soil displacement flow velocity changes from 0.7 to 1.3 ms with reservoir containment holding. Of the 49 personnel stationed at the dam, only 3 required evacuation due to debris, none seriously injured. This permitted the immediate redeployment of Maudslay's surviving aircraft to secondary targets identified at 2:05, an option previously unavailable given anticipated breaching. At Allied Bomber Command Headquarters, Air Vice Marshal Ralph Cochrane received confirmation of Sorp's status at 2:17 hours. He ordered the suspension of further upkeep attacks on Earth dams and directed Pathfinder units to refocus night operations on rail and power junctions in the western Ruhr, redirecting 14 aircraft to targets of opportunity. This mid-operation adjustment necessitated redistributing over 11,000 kilos of ordnance and revising fuel allocations for return sorties. Group Captain Leonard Cheshire adjusted navigation beacons for these aircrews to new coordinates, citing reduced flak risk and better target visibility compared to the original plan. Radio message BTX 227, sent at 2:26 hours, officially shifted priority to industrial infrastructure bypassing the now surviving Sorp. By 300 hours, the Merhen and Eder operations remained 39 minutes ahead of expected timeline benchmarks. Actual casualty figures were 128 lower than pre-strike models projected for additional direct assaults on Sorp. Post-operation analysis attributed a 41% reduction in aircraft losses to the mid-mission refocus. Strategically, the refocused air activity delayed repairs to German rail capacity by 4 to 6 weeks, while preserving resources for Operation Gomorrah scheduled for July 1943. Ultimately, technical limits at Sorp contributed to the preservation of critical Allied bomber assets and influenced future dam attack doctrines. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. Documents recovered in 1976 revealed that Sergeant John Minchin, tail gunner in Lancaster AJP of 617 Squadron, described a harrowing moment during the approach to the Eder Dam. Minchin wrote on May 18, 1943, "We flew so low that treetops smacked the fuselage and the flak lit the cockpit green." This account contradicted the sanitized official mission summary, which described no significant aircraft damage en route to Eder. The discrepancy occurred due to strict censorship of operational diaries. This detail remained unknown until the RAF Air Historical Branch files were declassified in the late 1970s. Supply records from 617 Squadron's quartermaster, logged on May 14, 1943, show a significant shortfall in spare bomb arming fuses. Official orders specified 24 functioning arming kits. Actual inventory was only 15, a 37.5% shortfall that critically affected how many fully armed upkeep mines could be prepared. Quartermaster FLT. LT. Brian Rowe reported the shortage to Group Captain James Whitworth, but urgent replacement requests went unanswered due to overloaded RAF logistics in May 1943. This constraint limited the number of bombers that could fly with backup mines, a factor that slightly reduced the attacking force's capability. The May 18, 1943 after-action report stated 35 German casualties at the Merhen Dam. However, German Red Cross records documented on May 20 recorded at least 68 fatalities. Medical records from Flak Regiment 916 detailed 57 wounded, higher than official British estimates. The discrepancy, 68 versus 35, a 94% difference. Historian Charles Foster's 2008 research using German civil defense and hospital records revealed that many deaths among dam workers and forced laborers went uncounted in British reports. This new evidence shifted historical understanding of the raid's human cost on the ground near the Merhen. While bomber command planners emphasized synchronized attack timings, crews at the Eder Dam struggled with persistent ground fog. Private William Atkinson, ground support, encountered flooding in his signal cable trench, risking loss of communications. His improvised solution uplifting cables onto wooden ration crates proved crucial and was repeated in at least 12 comparable situations. Post-war interviews with over 20 veterans confirmed this improvisational pattern. The prescribed tactical doctrine for portable communications underestimated flooding risks, yet the procedures persisted due to lack of revised manuals. Weather data from the British Meteorological Office for May 16, 1943, shows unexpected conditions. Low cloud base at 182 meters, wind gusts to 15 knots, and visibility of just 900 meters. Official plans assumed clear visibility and 5 knots maximum wind. Actual conditions deviated by over 80%. The Avro Lancaster's optical bomb sight was rated for minimum 2,000 meters visibility, but during the attack, sighting performance degraded sharply. This problem, not fully understood until post-war wind tunnel and visibility experiments, helped explain why several bombs at the Eder missed their intended drop zones. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in declassified German military engineering reports and RAF crew interviews. Post-war analysis completed in 1946 concluded that Operation Chastise's success at Mürren and Eder was primarily due to the technical superiority of the upkeep mine and flawless execution by 617 Squadron. Historian Basil Collier's 1957 study, The Defense of the United Kingdom, argued that the dams succumbed to precision skill and a new weapon, drawing mainly from bomber command summaries and British after-action reports. The official Air Ministry history, published in 1951, credited only 53 German fatalities and minimal civilian casualties. This interpretation prevailed for more than 2 decades, largely due to classified Allied intelligence, limited post-war access to German records, and a preoccupation with technological achievement over human impact. Early research was constrained to British archival sources and lacked input from German witness accounts or hospital logs. Declassification of German Red Cross and local civil defense records in 1977 fundamentally altered this assessment. Historian Charles Foster's detailed 2008 examination of these archives uncovered evidence of over 1,200 civilian deaths, directly resulting from the dam breaches, far surpassing prior totals. A memorandum from Westphalian authorities described, "The night of water took everything the list of lost children and workers grows." Comparing the Ruhr raid to the August 1943 bombing of the Italian Fucine Dam, the latter's technical similarities, comparable bomb weights and target dimensions, resulted in just 14 fatalities due to pre-raid evacuations. At Mürren, unanticipated downstream flooding and a lack of civilian warning led to 1,200 deaths. The key difference was civil defense evacuation. At Fucine, pre-warning procedures cut casualties by over 90%, whereas in the Ruhr, the absence of advance alerts had fatal consequences. This comparative analysis revealed that the impact of the Chastise raid was shaped as much by civil defense failures as by bombs themselves. Research published in 2014 by the Ruhr Dams Archive using digital casualty mapping revised prior British estimates. Earlier numbers put losses at 53. Present consensus recognizes at least 1,400 civilian and forced labor deaths, a 25–43% increase. Some historians, including John Sweetman, argue that these higher numbers may include indirect casualties. Mainstream accounts, supported by combined British-German lists, confirm the revised toll. Analysis by the Imperial War Museum in 2020 used geolocated data to verify these findings. The historiographical debate now centers on distinguishing immediate from indirect deaths, reflecting the complexity of assessing total impacts on war production and civilian populations. Albert Edward Gregory, Flight Sergeant, bomb aimer in Lancaster AJM. Mother, age 27, from Bristol, was stationed at RAF Scampton on May 16, 1943. Before enlisting, Gregory had worked as a machinist at Bristol Aeroplane Company. At 52 hours with his Lancaster damaged by flak near Mürren, Gregory faced the decision to attempt another attack run or abort. In a 1984 interview, he recalled, "My hands shook at the bomb site. I knew if I missed, others might not come home." Gregory's choice to press the attack resulted in a direct hit. His crew's upkeep breached the dam, saving 2 following aircraft from further exposure to anti-aircraft fire. Gregory suffered shrapnel wounds but survived, later returning to civilian aviation. When interviewed at age 73, he said, "That night changed me forever. Loss and pride both stayed." He died in 1993 in Somerset. His oral history is held in the Imperial War Museum collections. Oberfeldwebel Erich Koster, Luftwaffe gunner, Flak Regiment 916, experienced the raid from a defensive position at the Eder Dam. Captured while attempting to escape with injured comrades, his interrogation on May 19, 1943, revealed confusion about the attacker's low approach. Koster admitted, "We thought it crazy. It never occurred that a bomb could skip on water." After the war, Koster returned to Hanover, later meeting former Allied flyers at a 1963 veterans event. His account matched Allied reports on the attack's timing, but differed on the effectiveness of flak, dismissing claims of accurate targeting during the chaos. Maria Szymanska, Polish forced laborer, Murhin village, was swept up in the aftermath of the dam breach. She described in post-war testimony sheltering children in a stone barn as floodwaters rose. Medical files show a diagnosis of nervous shock in 1944. At the time, support for traumatized civilians was almost non-existent. Her case was echoed by hundreds of foreign workers affected similarly. By 1951, Szymanska had emigrated and became involved in survivor advocacy groups. Her story, preserved in the National Museum of Poland, contributed to research on civilian and forced labor suffering, influencing post-war German compensation policy. These individual experiences, when examined across hundreds of documented cases, revealed patterns that affected both strategic planning and post-war humanitarian response. Within 90 minutes of the final upkeep mine's detonation at the Sorp Dam, direct communications from Air Vice Marshal Ralph Cochrane at Bomber Command Headquarters resulted in a complete halt to attacks on earthen dam structures. At 2:27 hours, Cochrane received confirmation that Sorp had not breached. By 2:30, he redirected 14 aircraft and over 11,000 kilos of ordnance from dam targets to secondary objectives rail yards and electrical substations in the western Ruhr, approximately 65 kilometers from the original targets. This shift required rapid revision of flight plans and the reallocation of fuel for return routes, impacting 119 aircrew and 32 aircraft across two wings. By 3:45 hours, actual aircraft losses were 8 instead of pre-raid projections of 11, demonstrating a 27% reduction in operational casualties due to the real-time shift in targeting priorities. Within 48 hours, operational focus shifted across the Ruhr. Operation Bellicose, previously set for June 2, was advanced by 5 days in response to the damage assessment reports received May 18. Air Chief Marshal Sir Arthur Harris authorized the redeployment of 21 bomber squadrons, allocating 168 additional sorties directly against Ruhr infrastructure. This came at the cost of reduced air cover for Operation Point Blank in northern France. 7 squadrons, and 41 heavy bombers were diverted from their original assignment. Casualty projections for Chastise raids were revised from 286 to 153 aircrew, a 46% reduction. Pre-raid supply planning anticipated 62,000 gallons of aviation fuel. Actual consumption dropped to 44,000 gallons, and bomb fuse usage fell by 38% due to the early end of upkeep deployment. By July 1943, the delayed German rail recovery affected the timeline for Operation Gomorrah. The bombing of Hamburg depended on weakened Ruhr logistics, so by July 2, transport bottlenecks persisted. The Eder and Murhin dams breaching allowed British ground forces to secure key infrastructure in North Rhine-Westphalia on August 14, 1943, 3 weeks ahead of the original estimate. Rail junction at Hagen remained disrupted until September 8, restricting 5 subsequent German resupply operations for at least 6 weeks. Personnel impacts included the promotion of Group Captain Leonard Cheshire on September 1. 6 squadron leaders received distinguished service orders for their roles in adapting to new targets. The standard operating procedure for attacking large earth dams was formally abandoned in October 1943 by RAF Bomber Command, replaced with specialized protocols for vertical targets only. The overall trajectory of the war in Western Europe was altered measurably. Operations in the Ruhr, first planned for July 4, proceeded instead on June 23, a gain of 11 days. Nearly 2,900 square kilometers of industrial territory came under Allied bombing control by August 1943, contrasting with projections of October in pre-raid models. The quicker closure of the Ruhr permitted 72 additional heavy bombers to reinforce the Mediterranean theater, directly influencing the success of Operation Avalanche in Italy by September 9. Strategically, while the German High Command had anticipated restored industrial output by late September, British intelligence documented continuing production disruption in the Ruhr until December 18. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout the 1943 campaign. Military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the real-time order to halt attacks on the Sorp Dam had not been issued, and 617 Squadron had continued attempting to breach it using upkeep mines, Allied losses would have risen sharply. The timetable for Operation Bellicose, targeting Friedrichshafen, could not have commenced until June 13, approximately 11 days later than the actual June 2 start date. This delay was rooted in the absence of sufficient returned Lancasters, and bomber cruise records show 617 Squadron would have suffered an estimated 40% higher attrition without the tactical shift. British historian Sebastian Cox's 1999 study projected an additional 31 to 48 aircrew casualties, and at least 3 further aircraft lost if attacks had persisted at Sorp, based on sortie rates and wreck recovery times. Territorial control in the Ruhr would have remained under German command until late September, over a month longer than recorded, due to continued delays in targeting industrial choke points. German anti-aircraft units, spared by fewer secondary raids, would have retained the capability to disrupt Allied bombing corridors until mid-August, directly affecting preparations for Operation Gomorrah in Hamburg. Comparing the Chastise outcome to other European aerial engagements, Operation Chastise involved 133 aircrew, targeted 3 Ruhr dams, and affected 60 kilometers of industrial corridor, resulting in a 9-week disruption to German production. By contrast, the August 1943 attack on the Fucine Dam in Italy engaged 124 aircrew, 1 hydropower target, and delayed local output by less than 3 days. The Düren raid of November 16, 1944, mobilized over 1,000 bombers, destroyed infrastructure across 25 kilometers, yet deliverables were restored within 10 days. Staff colleges at the UK Defense Academy and the United States Air Force Academy study Operation Chastise alongside the Fucine and Düren raids, illustrating the impact of real-time command flexibility. In the overall Ruhr campaign, 11% of operations were directly affected by Chastise's outcomes, compared to just 2% for the Fucine raid. Dr. John Sweetman's 2013 survey ranked the Chastise operation third among 15 decisive Western Front air campaigns based on cumulative production loss, force attrition, and disruptions imposed on enemy logistics. The prevailing scholarly perspective recognizes Operation Chastise as a tactically improvisational success. The Imperial War Museum supports this interpretation, citing Allied after-action reports and German repair logs as key evidence. Historian Olaf Grohler of the German Wehrtechnikdienst Stelle contends logistical failures on the German side offset structural weaknesses exploited by the bombers. The ongoing debate centers on whether the raid's industrial effect justified its personnel risk. Primary RAF and Luftwaffe documents reveal both sides acknowledged decisive production halts. Declassified plans from the National Archives, released in 1987, confirmed that Allied planners rapidly adjusted to the Sorp-S resilience, resolving previous disputes over doctrine. The current consensus holds that the Chastise operation was of high operational significance, advancing strategic timelines by up to 11 days, reducing casualties by nearly half relative to projections, and forcing German resource shifts that shaped subsequent campaigns. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Albert Edward Gregory, flight sergeant, bomb aimer in Lancaster AJM, attacked the Merhen Dam and returned to Bristol in 1945. After the war, he became an engineer for British European Airways. Gregory devoted 19 years to veteran commemoration, assisting in the establishment of the Dambusters Memorial Fund. In a 1984 Imperial War Museum interview, he said, Some of us wondered if all that water would ever be contained again. I remember the faces of the men I flew with every May. He maintained contact with 12 squadron members. His recorded memoir is archived at the Imperial War Museum, London. Gregory died in 1993, age 77, in Somerset. The Dambusters Memorial at Woodhall Spa, Lincolnshire, was dedicated on May 17, 1983. Its central granite obelisk features the names of all 133 men who flew Operation Chastise. Annual remembrance ceremonies on May 16 draw more than 2,000 attendees. The 60th anniversary in 2003 featured over 100 veterans and a flypast by modern RAF aircraft. Military education incorporates Operation Chastise into the air warfare curriculum at the Royal Air Force College, Cranwell, emphasizing adaptive tactics and weapons employment. In 1985, the RAF updated strike doctrine, disallowing high-risk, low-altitude dam attacks following Chastise's lessons. This change affected operational training in 7 bomber and 12 reconnaissance squadrons. The Imperial War Museum holds over 420 documents and 38 oral histories specific to the raid. Modern military practice draws directly from tactics developed during Chastise. The skip bombing technique was adapted during Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003 for attacks on river crossings. The U.S. Air Force published a 2007 analysis tracing precision low-altitude delivery requirements to Chastise. Hydraulic engineering improvements required after upkeep failures informed the design of resilient dams built worldwide after 1951. Command reform, prompted by the identified need for improved mission flexibility, led to the RAF's establishment of dynamic targeting doctrine in 1996. The Eder Dam site is now a protected historical site, receiving 50,000 visitors annually.